Governments are no longer denying it. The military are no longer denying it. And even mainstream media no longer denies it. They're here and have been here for a very long time. The Mutual UFO Network has been on the front lines uncovering the truth since 1969. And now we're sharing the truth with you. Welcome to MUFON's What's Up with hosts Katie Grabowski, Christopher DiPerno, and Katie Cook, exclusively on the KGRA Digital Broadcasting Network. Wondering what's up? So are we.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to our new night, Tuesday night. I hope everybody had a fantastic Valentine's Day yesterday and a fantastic weekend. You are listening to MUFON What's Up Radio, the show that says discovery starts with curiosity and curiosity starts with MUFON, brought to you by KGRADB.com. And I hope you go to their website and check out all their great content. As always, the show is sponsored by MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, always asking that all-important question, are we alone in the universe? Also, don't forget to go to the Denver Symposium MUFON register site and sign up for the symposium, because I hope to see you all out there this July. We have got, I know we mentioned Maddie Tobias last week, and she is going to reschedule for a later date, but boy, do we have a treat for you tonight. We have Richard Dolan coming in here shortly. First, I'd like to introduce my co-host, Katie Cook. You see her on Country Music Television and loves all things UFO and paranormal. Welcome, Katie.
Thank you so much. I do indeed love all things UFO and paranormal, and I'm a big fan of Richard Dolan. So I'm very, very excited to have him on the show. I have so many questions for him. I know you do too.
I do too. And unfortunately, Chris had an emergency today and cannot be with us for this show. So I hope all goes well with Chris. Yes. So Katie, what do you have to kick us off?
Oh, yes. Well, I like to kick things off with the UFO meme of the week. This one I found is actually a birthday card that I found from NobleWorks on Amazon. How cute is that? So for those of you that are just listening, well, let's just say there's a female alien saying to a male alien, hey, my eyes are down here because her eyes are low. And well, you just have to imagine it. This is why you need to see the video version of the show always, because these memes are too cute. And let's talk about our paranormal pop of the week, kicking it old school this week. I'm going back to the silver saucer. I think I showed you guys this one really early on one of our first shows. And I just thought, we're getting new viewers every week. So I wanted to go back and show that classic silver craft. That right. One is
They give you the silver lips when you eat that one.
Yeah, I know.
So you kind of look like an alien.
Vanilla is one of my favorite smells. And this one is like a sweet vanilla chocolate. It is so good. And Wendy, who of course makes paranormal pops, she is cooking up something special for us for St. Patty's Day. Look out for those. She's doing something really cute with the alien ones for that. And of course, as always, you can order these at paranormalpops.com. So get you some. And finally, I found something that I think we both need here, Katie. Again, for those of you just watching or just listening, rather, not watching, it says warning. Oh, actually, that's the Paranormal Pops banner. But let's show the sticker, Amanda. I found this really cute sticker. It says warning, may spontaneously start talking about UFOs. Oh, I thought that was so cute. But I found this on a site called teepublic.com. That's TEE public.com. And what's so cool about this design is you can have it put like on a mug, on a T-shirt, on a poster. And I was just thinking, my previous coworkers would have probably really appreciated it if I had worn a T-shirt that said that, because I could basically
wear every day.
I know, because I could turn any conversation into the UFO topic, but I make no apologies about that.
Right.
So anyway, we have some great news for you this week. And like Katie said, unfortunately, Chris isn't with us. He'll be with us next week. But I'm going to do my best for you. I'm no Chris DiPerno. I'm nowhere near as funny, but I'm going to do my best. All right. So let's see. Story number 1 was a downed UFO spotted in Antarctica on Google Earth. UFO hunters scouring Google Earth for images of strange and unusual objects may have spotted a peculiar triangular-shaped object sitting on the frosty surface of Antarctica, and some suspect it could be some kind of downed craft from out of this world. Standing out amidst a vast and untouched area of tundra Antarctica between two mountains, the object appears to resemble a boomerang and appears to have left a lengthy trail of disturbed snow behind it. So often the case with curious sights captured by Google Earth, some must wonder if perhaps the satellite service may have inadvertently stumbled upon something alien. And Amanda, I think we have a photo of that. It does look pretty interesting.
Yeah.
Well, if it is alien, the lack of any trails coming from the object certainly suggests that the unfortunate ETs within the craft either died upon impact or are stuck in a remote part of Antarctica waiting for help to arrive from somewhere out in the cosmos. For their sake, one can only hope that their interstellar vehicle has good heating, since it could take a while before the alien version of AAA can make it to them. But we need a little drum set for that. All right, and we have another picture here. And let's see, setting that fantastic theory aside, skeptics will say that the UFO spotted in Antarctica is simply a sizable snowdrift made to look exotic by way of light and shadow. Well, Amanda, we have a video we want to play you. Let's take a look at that, please.
Looks like something may have slid into the snow. Definitely favors the shape of a triangle craft. And there's something up here, too, just north of what looks like a triangle sitting in the snow. And you can see a dent in the snow right there. We're going to take a closer look at that location here in just a moment. But notice the angle of the shadows. They're going this way from right to left. So that tells us that more than likely, this is a solid object of some sort. It could be just a rogue rock sitting out here that's been unnoticed, but there's nothing else out in this area. Everything in the immediate area here is very smooth. This is the only thing that shows up out here in the middle of this snow. And again, it looks like a dent right there in the snow. So I took a screen grab of this location with this object, whatever it is, in the center. It looks like a black triangle craft. So here's the original, and here's the coordinates to the location if you want to come check it out. Looks like a triangle craft to me. The next photos, you're going to see about 9 different photos of enhancements of this same area. Again, it just kind of favors a triangle craft. It looks like something right up here in this particular format that has 90-degree angles on 2 parts of it. This one here looks more like a boomerang, maybe some sort of a flying machine, or once was a flying machine that landed in the snow down here out in the middle of Antarctica. That could be a piece of it right up there. Here it is in a negative format. Light is dark, dark is light. And you can see the features of what looked like a winged craft, or used to be a winged craft of some sort, that is now sitting out in the middle of Antarctica. Here it is just simply reversed, and this is a different format showing bright points of light reflecting off of whatever this is here. And then also it's showing us something just to the north. And it looks like whatever it was, it's seen better days. And then again, it could be just covered up with snow. But it does look like something may have landed in the snow, moving at a high rate of speed, leaving behind a gouge in the snow out in the middle of nowhere down here in Antarctica. And remember, the shadow down here that we see over here, what looks like a tall pyramid, is coming from right to left. And this shadow here, if that were a shadow, is going from left to right. So that tells us that more than likely that is not a shadow.
Alien craft waiting for AAA or another hunk of snow. What do you think, Katie G?
All I can think is first of all, if it is a craft of some sort, whether it's ours or theirs, hopefully it's a drone and there's nobody on it, because obviously the occupants of whatever that is would freeze to death out there, like they're stranded. Can't see footprints, although I don't think you could see that from that far of a distance.
Yeah.
But I don't know. It's compelling that they really analyzed the shadows, because at first I thought shadows, and then of course that, who knows? And I know, there's been other things spotted out there in Antarctica that are very curious. I know one, you mentioned that face, that ice face.
Yes. Yes, that there was an alien face that people were seeing on Google Earth, and I think we actually have a picture of that too. And you can do the Google Earth coordinates and zoom into it, which is actually a lot of fun to do. I mean, yes, obviously that does look like a face. I mean, who knows? Who knows? Yeah, I will say one possible good thing about global warming is if a lot of stuff melts, we may get to the bottom of some of what's out there. But yeah, you can Google how to find that face. It's a lot of fun. I don't know if they ever figured out exactly what it is, but I don't know. We shall see. All right.
Compelling.
Story 2, secret military plasma technology may explain some UFOs. Plasma is one of the 4 fundamental states of matter. Its use in aerial military applications is also the cause for many of the mystery balls of light or orb types UFO sightings. Recent technology now declassified and admissions by a world-renowned plasma physicist helps to support this. Many of these glowing cigar, saucer, or globe-shaped lights may be engineered by man and are often mistaken for extraterrestrial UFOs. These highly advanced plasma craft and other flying plasma objects have been operating under a cloak of extreme secrecy until now. All right, so let's see. We've got a picture of plasma there. So what is plasma exactly? Well, it's superheated matter so hot that the electrons are ripped away from the atoms, forming an ionized gas. Heating a gas will form a plasma. These secret plasma craft have been developed by the U.S. Department of Defense. So what exactly has the U.S. military been up to? Let's see. All right, what about plasma cloaked aircraft or plasma stealth, which is a process using ionized gas to reduce the radar cross-section of an aircraft? Can't even wrap my head around that. Artificial plasma density clouds. Plasma clouds can suspend in midair for up to an hour. They are used as artificial mirrors. The U.S. Naval Research Laboratory Plasma Physics Division have successfully produced sustained high-density plasma clouds in the Earth's atmosphere. Let's take a look at those. This might explain some of the really weird cloud videos that we've been getting lately. Right. Clouds that seem to be moved around the sky almost, like remote controlled. It's pretty weird. Plasma can reduce drag. A plasma charge on the leading edge of a wing reduces the drag on the vehicle it surrounds. And we have a DARPA sketch of that. It's pretty interesting. And highly classified plasma propulsion systems are being tested. Plasma thrusters and plasma jet engines are the future of what propels military flight. And that future is now. Wow, that's so weird. All right, let's take a peek at what may be a possible plasma stealth craft. Amanda. Pretty weird. All right. So do we have plasma stealth technology and plasma thruster capabilities? You decide. What do you think, KDG?
Well, man, I wish that video was zoomed out further. It's so zoomed in. It's really hard to tell what you're looking at and the size. And also, is that highway noise we're hearing? Are these craft silent? Or is that... I couldn't tell from that video. So I wish we had a better video, but I know, it's top secret. So just
well, it did sound like highway noise to me for sure. And I agreed. It would have been nice to have some perspective, even if they just could have panned over to show a tree or power lines or anything. But I actually had a video sent to me. I don't have it. I'm not trying to be a big tease. I'm going to see if I can get it to show. But somebody sent me a video that looks really similar to this that was shot between Tennessee and Kentucky that looks so much like that. So it's definitely. And I was going to say, even the case of the week last week, remember we had the helicopter and those two. Was that a plasma craft? I mean, I suppose it's possible. So well, and they always say, oh, we're probably 40 years further advanced than what the public knows that we have. I feel like that might be sort of shortening as technology advances. That might have been true maybe more like 20, 30 years ago, but you have to assume that we are still way ahead, than what we know we have. So anyway, well, speaking of cases of the week, have you got one for us this week?
I do. It's Interesting. Maybe it has something to do with that plasma. Anyway, I don't know. Anyway, it's case 118980. It's a category 2 case. It occurred October 30th, 2021 at 8:38 p.m., which was a Saturday night, which could be an important clue, by the way. 5 witnesses, and this was closed as an unknown UAV. And I'm just going to read you the deposition and watch the videos, and I have some photographs. Silent, brilliant lights in cylinder form pass right over us while sitting in the driveway. Coming from the southeast, then it ascends heading north-northwest. We were stunned for a few seconds while lights are moving directly above us just over the treetops. 3 of the lights during the video act like an anchor or an arm directing a cluster of sparkly lights. At the 13-second mark of the video, a green orb pops into the right side view very quickly, which could just be a reflection. A still shot of this orb is stunning. So if we want to run the original video of Case of the Week, original... I'm getting it. I love the narrative in that video. You kids video everything, and you're not videoing that. It's just made me laugh. That's great. All right, so I lightened it up and slowed it down. If we can run that, Amanda. Getting it. All right.
Wow.
So I got a couple of still frames photos. There's the original one that was sent, and then I took it in and played around with it for the second one, the modified version. Played with contrast and that. And then I have a couple more here. There's another one that's original. That one I cropped and played with. And next, that's kind of the triangular shape. They said, oh, it looked like a triangle for a second, but I did not see any structure to this video or any of these photos. I think since it's the night before Halloween, it's Saturday night, it's 8:30. Could it potentially have been, Chinese lanterns or something? I don't know. Obviously, the field investigator in this case couldn't identify what it was and closed it as a unknown. Which is what we're to do if we can't definitively say what it is. But
if everything just went this way, like lanterns, and then kind of burnt out and fell, I would say yes, especially like you said, Saturday night and all that. But what's so bizarre about this, and granted, you have to factor in if there was a lot of wind or not, but it's the way, okay, first of all, there's those 3 dots that are in a line that I would probably initially look at and think that's satellite, Starlink or something like that. That's what it's called, right? Starlink. Yeah. But the way it kind of did this, and then it changes direction and then seems to kind of fly out altogether. Not a satellite, clearly. And how would lanterns, if the wind were blowing enough to do that, they would have started to break apart. That is a solid line, whatever that is.
And they stayed together. That's what I thought too.
Stay together. They move. They go out. So this is a true unknown for me. I can't begin to say this is satellites or lanterns. It just doesn't look that way.
And they did say it was oblong. So maybe those 3 lights were oblong. It did seem to be whatever those sparkles were that were coming behind it. So a pretty compelling case, I thought. So that's the case of the week.
Great case. Yeah.
And I think we caught up with Bob this week. So if we want to run the Bob video, that would be great.
Hi, everybody. This is Bob Spearing, MUFON's Mutual Director of Investigations on the international side. Today, I have a video from Australia that we analyzed, and we get a lot of these. I've shown you some before. It is Christmas Eve in Australia, daytime, very windy. People are having an outside Christmas party, and they gradually start to notice an object in the sky. It's very windy, so I'm going to stay quiet. I want you to listen to what they're saying when the object comes into focus. It's not the best quality video compared to the original that I could see, but I will let you watch their reactions to it, and then I'll explain what's going on. Okay, Chris, let it roll.
Society just breaks down on board, like, you know, the adults kind of gets killed, and then they try to like Lord of the Flies on an airship, spaceship.
Oh, look at this! Look, I've zoomed in. It's split into two.
Is it like a?
You see it? Look on the video.
No, but is it?
Watch when it comes out of the cloud. It's just split into two different pieces.
It's probably like a couple of balloons.
Mate, that's super high for us to see.
It's more likely to be balloons than a UFO, though. Yeah, you can see the reflection out there.
Yeah.
Maybe it's just
No, it's definitely not a plane.
Happy Christmas.
Okay, Chris, you could cut it there. Okay, so what we have here is an object that is white. It's fairly high up. It's behind the clouds. The people at the party begin to notice it. And what you really can't see in this iteration of the video is that it seems to turn and shows that it's two objects. And then it goes behind the cloud at that point. When it comes back out, it's still floating gently across the sky. The one witness says that can't be a satellite because it's daytime. It's you know, just behind the clouds, but not incredibly high up like in space. And what it probably is a group of balloons. We get so many balloon reports week after week. A lot of them are white, a lot of them are mylar, silver. They reflect in the sun, but many times you'll see them twirling around in a group, especially the mylar ones, reflecting with sunlight. And people will say, oh my God, it's some sort of multi-modular, you know, object in the sky. And all it is a bunch of party balloons. So that's what we have here. And that's it for today. Chris, thank you for having me, and I hope I see you next week.
Womp, womp, womp. Thank you, Bob.
The old Mylar balloon trick.
Dang it. Oh, but we're getting educated. That's all right.
Yes.
So did we have a celebrity spotlight yet?
Yes, a little another edition of Unidentified Flying Celebrities. I've got that again this week. And this time around, it's our celebrities that are space travelers. You'll see what I mean. Amanda, can we roll that?
Welcome to another Unidentified Flying Celebrities Astronaut Edition. You no doubt already know that Dr. Edgar Mitchell, sixth person to walk on the moon, firmly believed that alien life wasn't just a reality, but that they had a keen interest in Earth and its inhabitants. But what do some of his fellow astronauts think? The first British astronaut in space was Helen Sharman. Helen is not shy about her beliefs when it comes to us not being alone. In an interview with The Guardian's Observer magazine in January 2020, Helen said, quote, "Aliens exist. There's no two ways about it. There are so many billions of stars out there in the universe that there must be all sorts of different forms of life," end quote. She went on to add, "It's possible they're here right now and we simply can't see them." Well, Helen, we appreciate your input, but there's plenty of people who would say, "Trust me, we see them." Scott Kelly has made 4 space flights, commanded the International Space Station 3 times, and spent 11 months straight on the ISS as part of a scientific study conducted by NASA. So where does he stand on the alien UFO question? When asked by CNN whether he believed in UFOs, his immediate response was a definitive no, saying, quote, "I think the distances are too great. The nearest Earth-like planet, if we went as fast as we could, would take 80,000 years to get there," end quote. Scott also said that he hasn't seen a convincing piece of video evidence that would change his mind. Well, Scott, don't worry. We're looking every day. That's your unidentified flying celebrity report, astronaut edition.
Excellent.
Gotta show both sides of the story. Not
That's
everyone
right.
believes.
That's right. I mean, yeah, that was a really good addition. And it makes me wonder, about the, why some of us sees this phenomenon and others don't. And that's true with astronauts as well. You have those that just are like, nope, never seen a thing. And then there's a good amount of astronauts and pilots out there that have had experiences. So what is that about? I don't know. It's so interesting to me. Anyway, maybe Richard Dolan will know. I think now's a really good time to bring on our guest, Richard Dolan.
Yes.
Let me read his bio here. Richard Dolan is one of the world's leading researchers and writers on the subject of UFOs and believes that they constitute the greatest mystery of our time. Boy, don't we all? He is the author of 2 volumes of history, UFOs and the National Security State, both groundbreaking works which together provide the most factually complete and accessible narrative of the UFO subject available anywhere. And they are so super informative, those books. He also co-authored a speculative book about the future, AD After Disclosure, the first ever analyst not only of how UFO secrecy might end, but also examines the all-important question, what happens next? Richard's latest work, UFOs for the 21st Century Mind, provides a fresh treatment of the entire subject. In it, he describes the important sightings, the encounters, the politics, the cover-ups, ancient aliens, the bizarre science, disclosure, and offers advice on being both critical and open-minded in today's world. A really good balance there. Like his previous 3 books, it asks fresh questions and offers new insights to further our understanding of the UFO mystery. Richard hosts a weekly radio show, The Richard Dolan Show, on KGRA Radio, and is a frequent guest on Coast to Coast AM. He is currently featured on several television series and documentaries, including Ancient Aliens, Hangar One, The UFO Files, and many, many more. So please, let's welcome Richard Dolan to the show. Welcome, Richard.
Thanks a lot, Katie and Katie. Great to be here. And sorry, Chris couldn't be here with us, but I'm happy to be here with you guys.
Thank you so much, Richard, for being here. Yes, it's an honor to have you on our show. And, I've met you, a couple times through the past years, but I've never really gotten the chance to really talk with you all that much one-to-one. So honestly, excuse me, but I really don't know how or why you kind of got into ufology in the first place. So if you can give me the shortened version on, what brings you to this topic?
I came in through the ordinary obsessions that bring pretty much anyone in. For me, it wasn't a sighting. It wasn't an experience. It wasn't anything like that. It was, I would say it was intense curiosity. 30 years ago, wow, long time ago, I was on my way to a different kind of a career. I thought that I wanted to teach at a university. I wanted to be a professor of history at some American school, and I was working on a PhD there in American Cold War studies. So it was everything having to do with the early Cold War, Harry Truman, the CIA, and the Soviets, and all of that. And I was in a bookstore, and I saw a copy of Timothy Good's classic work called Above Top Secret.
Oh, wow.
That book had been out for a few years, but I'd never heard of it. And it was on a nice display case. And the subtitles what caught my attention, The Worldwide UFO Cover-Up. And, it's a big fat book. And I thought, wow. My attitude toward UFOs up till then, I was about 30. I think it was an average attitude. It was like, oh, yeah, they're interesting. I don't know anything about it. I didn't spend any time thinking about UFOs, not anything So I wasn't a believer and I wasn't a skeptic. I just didn't think about it. But that book intrigued me. And, I remembered flipping through the pages and recognizing a lot of the names that he had in the book because I was studying them in an academic setting. The first director of the CIA, Roscoe Hillenkotter. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember reading about him. What, UFOs? He was interested in that? How come I never read about this? And then all these other connections that he was pointing out in his book. And I had this feeling like, am I just dealing with a schizophrenic society here? Like there's this official truth that I'm learning in my history books in the university. And then there's this whole other alleged situation. And I simply wanted to know, is this true or not? Is there anything to this? I mean, if there was an interest in UFOs that these early national leaders in the Cold War had, how is it that I'd never read about it in any standard academic history book? It's a simple thing. And I just thought, I want to know. I wasn't deep into it. I didn't want to ask like, what are they aliens or not? I wasn't even there. I just wanted to know, is this a thing? And if it is a thing, why was it seemingly eliminated? So I bought that book and I read it very carefully. And then I got involved in what was then the internet. We're talking early 90s before there was a web. But there were news groups. There was one called Alt Paranet UFO. Another one was called Alt Alien Visitors, I think. And I used to go to those, and those were funny because it was basically people yelling at each other. It's like, you suck. No, you suck. I hate you. I'm going to kill you. But there was good UFO interesting information there too. And the next thing I knew, I was just totally obsessed. And then the next thing I knew, I was lying in bed staring at the ceiling every night thinking, wait a minute, like if this is true, then what does that tell me about everything I thought I knew about the Truman administration or the Eisenhower or the Kennedy White House? Like there's this big missing piece here, and I just want to fill it in. And that started me on my way to my first book, which was UFOs and the National Security State, which took me about 5 years to write. And that's what changed my life.
Yeah. Well,
this is a big book right here.
Yeah.
There it is. That's Tim Good.
Yep.
That's the one. That's the one that got me going.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Katie, and then I have a comment after you.
Oh, yeah. Well, no, go ahead with your comment, actually.
I was just going to say, I mean, to me, and I talk about this a lot, and I think with Richard, it as interesting as the UFO ET phenomenon is, it's the people that are involved that really, like, to me, I've always said, like, these people wouldn't be involved in this phenomenon if there was nothing to it, right? I mean, even in MUFON, we have, we've through the years have interesting people that come and go in and out of MUFON, and why, and that just totally fascinates me. And you're right, there's all these deep dark secrets, and later in the show I want to talk about the Eisenhower and Roswell, because I've been working on a Denver body case with Eisenhower's and all that. But so I'm just like right there with you. I think that's a really great angle to come at the phenomenon from, is the secrecy behind it. So,
and you're talking about the interesting people, and that's one thing that got me early on too. It's like Tim Good is a great example. I mean, he's a professional musician of very high intellect. Timothy Good is a extremely intelligent man, very sophisticated. But he's just one of many UFO researchers through the years. I go back, I started looking at the 1940s and 50s. And what you find with those researchers is they were just independent, creative thinkers who were not willing to be steamrolled by an establishment propaganda line that was being fed to them back in the 50s. So these are like, if you're an American, you want to take pride in being an independent thinker. Well, that's what these people were. They were independent thinkers. They were smart. They were good researchers, and they were brave. People like Donald Kehoe, Coral Lorenzen. They're two of my earliest heroes of that period. You read either of their books. Coral Lorenzen's a great case in point. She was, I wish I had met her. I never had the chance. My understanding is she was a tough customer. Like if you got on her bad side, she wasn't really friendly to you. But she was so smart and insightful and an excellent writer.
Right. And didn't they develop APRO? Is that right?
That's right. She and her husband Jim created the Aerial Phenomena Research Organization, APRO, which was hugely important.
And it's a shame that we don't have access to those files. They're kind of lost in the abyss. I mean, I was just recently was emailing back and forth with David Marler about how, because, David has all the great archives. I'm like, where's APRO? And Timothy Good, actually, in one of Timothy Good's book, he writes about the Colorado Skinwalker Ranch that I had experiences on in one of Timothy Good's books. And APRO was the one that investigated the ranch. So I, more than anything, would love to get my hands on these APRO reports. But
APRO investigated the Skinwalker Ranch?
Well, no, the Colorado
Colorado case.
Skinwalker Ranch. Yeah. So Dr. Leo Sprinkle, another great pioneer,
fascinating.
That was well ahead of his time. And one of those people you talk about. I mean, he was in there forging ahead and going against the status quo and had a very open mind, but he was a part of APRO. And, a couple other PhDs worked on that, Peter Van Arsdale and John Durr, which, since Leo passed away, I've been writing my second book and I feel guided by Leo. And in fact, I've been searching for John Durr since 2017. And lo and behold, I just found him and made contact with him. And
this is fascinating.
Yeah. And I just feel like, okay, thanks, Leo.
Leo Sprinkle, like a lot of the folks within the UFO field know of him, but he never really sought the limelight, I don't think. But he was really, I would say, the first full-time dedicated UFO abduction researcher. Like, I think he really was. Like, he was the first one to do like lots of hypnotic regressions on people who'd had abduction experiences. There was the man who did Betty and Barney Hill, Benjamin Simon, but he wasn't a UFO researcher. Leo was dedicated to this, and he did so many of them starting in the 1960s.
Right.
So he was ahead of everyone in that.
Yeah. You met Leo, didn't you, Katie?
Oh yeah, I loved Leo. He really helped me in my early 20s when I was trying to make sense of some experiences I had. Just a very kind man. I obviously didn't know him like you guys did, but I just feel so grateful that I got to know him at all. He's a beautiful person. So Richard, I've got a question for you because you've been studying this for so long. And like Katie said, it's so cool that you came at this from the angle that you did, studying history and government. How does remote viewing play into all of this? Because that's something that now we know has been going on. Our government has, I got to meet Joe McMoneagle at Monroe Institute. He was one that worked with, Stargate Project, I think. Can you kind of help? I'm sure a lot of our viewers already know about this, but just tell us what you know about how this has been involved in the UFO phenomenon as well, all of these years.
Absolutely. That's a great question, Katie. I became interested in remote viewing early on in my study of UFOs. Like shortly after I published my first book, which was in 2000, and probably by 2002, I was wondering about remote viewing. I was learning about it at that time. And I thought, a lot of these remote viewers, these so-called psychic spies, seem to have bumped into the ET phenomenon in their remote viewing. Like in just my casual reading of it, I thought, wow, there are people like McMoneagle had talked about it. Ingo Swann had talked about it. I think Lynn Buchanan had talked about it. And I thought, what is this? Because these are people who seemed to have a high percentage of accuracy with their other remote views on behalf of the U.S. government. That was, I think, very well documented. So I wanted to know, like, what's the deal? There's a famous story of the late remote viewer, Pat Price, who in the mid-'70s walked into the office of Hal Puthoff at Stanford Research Institute and said, oh, yeah, in my spare time, I've been remote viewing alien bases that exist here on the Earth. I got a little tired of looking for submarines, so I thought I would just do this. And it was just a story that, and Pat Price was so good. He was like this magical remote viewer. He was one of the best ever. So things like that got me interested. And I, as a student, I don't do remote viewing, but I became very, very interested in it. So I guess as far as a relationship to UFOs, that's hard to say. Like remote viewers, when they get serious into it, many of them clearly are bumping into UFO targets, ET targets. Like I think there's a lot of tasking for that in the private organizations that still do this on behalf of the intelligence community. I mean, I think that has to be stated, whether it's the Monroe Institute or any other of these private groups. I mean, I've known my wife, Tracy Garbett, is one such person who did remote viewing. She was trained formally at it, and she knows for a fact, and I know as well, that a lot of those remote viewers are, I think, not even knowingly tasked to do work for one of the 3-letter agencies. So that still goes on. And how much of that is for a UFO, I'm not sure. But the thing is, like with remote view, the reason it's interesting from a UFO subject point of view, I guess, is everything we know about these other beings tells us that they've got mental capabilities that we might call telepathic or psychic in one way or another. And, that's something that we can do through remote viewing. I think I've come to believe that's a normal human capability. Some are better at it than others, but I think it's something that we have naturally. So the thing that gets me with remote viewing is it really screws with your notion of space and time and causality, because you've got remote viewers, they can see things not just on another part of the world, like, okay, how is that possible? But they can see things in other times, like past or future. And this has been documented quite satisfactorily, I'd say. Like, how did Pat Price be able to remote view future events while in a basement at Stanford Research Institute, while being tasked? And the experiment in the 70s was Puthoff and a skeptical scientist were driving around. I think it was San Francisco or Palo Alto, I think. Only the skeptical scientists knew what the 10 destinations of the city were going to be. And Price got, I think, 9 or 10 of them and got a couple of them before they arrived at the destination. So how do you do? What does that say about space and time? You tell me.
What does it
crazy.
say about our consciousness and how we can basically do whatever we want if we develop that muscle? And I only met Tracy once. I'd love to get to know her better, but I know she talked about the remote viewing and how she also went to Monroe Institute. I'd love to talk to her more about that. So you don't have nobody's ever come to you and said, I have been remote viewing. I've been tasked with remote viewing by our government to find aliens, to find life anywhere else. You don't know of anybody.
I know of, I don't know this person directly, but I know that there are several people who are convinced that they have been tasked. And for some of them, this is why they actually don't want to do it, because they are quite certain. But no, I should be clear about it. I've not spoken to anyone who has said, yes, I am definitely being tasked to remote view for the U.S. intelligence agency through a private contractor. I have not had anyone tell me that. But I know people who are quite sure that was the case with them.
Yeah, I'm just thinking, we're always saying how many are visiting us and obviously where from and all that kind of thing. But, people always throw out this number like 57. I'm just like, where do we get that number from? It's so
of alien species.
Yeah, exactly. And I just think, God, remote viewers could be a big key.
Right.
Figuring more out.
Yeah. Speaking of remote viewers, I mean, what do you think of alien bases on Earth? Do you believe they exist?
Yes.
You do?
I definitely
Okay.
do.
And can you speak on that a little bit? Maybe where? Dulce? What? I mean,
well, specifics. Look, I wouldn't say that I know of specifics, but it makes absolutely logical sense. And yes, I do. There are some of the remote viewers, Pat Price being one of them, who, when he says something, anyone who knows Pat Price's history has to take him seriously. So what Price said, I think it was in 1974, a long time ago, he said to Hal Puthoff, there were alien bases. One was in the Pyrenees Mountains between Spain and France. And there was a specific location. In fact, there are many people who discuss this to this day. There was one at Mount Hayes in Alaska, which he added had protection from some part within the U.S. government. There was one in Zimbabwe in a mountainous region there, and I cannot remember the exact name of that mountain, but he mentioned that. And then there was one in the deserts of Australia. The middle of that country is just vast. Not Pine Gap, but I think not far from there. I'm trying to remember. And in that one, he described as, I guess, a way like in the movie Men in Black, where they had the big alien base where all the humans and aliens met together. Something like that, without the comedy. But I think he described it as a kind of way station for a lot of these beings. And in fact, he said to Puthoff, if I'm not mistaken, I was zooming in on them and they became aware of me and I got the hell out of there. I didn't want them to see me.
wow.
So that's his story. And I mean, you can just say, well, it's just another fairy tale and you don't have to believe it. But I do take it seriously. I do look, if there is an alien presence here, and there's no question in my mind, when you look at the quantity of excellent UFO accounts that come out to this very day, the vast number of them, so many, someone is operating here with a large infrastructure. We ourselves have the ability to go deep underground with very sophisticated equipment. It makes perfect sense to me that they would do the same. They would have a presence here that is secure and protected, whether it's under the ground, under the ocean floor. There's lots of ocean base, large bodies of water-based UFO sightings, USOs. So I think yes.
Okay, well, I have a question. So I've been reading the Alien Agendas, loving that. You're basically making the case that human beings may have been taken, abducted, whatever you want to call it, as early as 40,000 years ago, and that we are in a fourth stage of humanity. Can you talk about that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Well, as far as with how long have we been taken? I talk about 40,000 years as a speculation, so I'll just say that. What did happen with human beings 40 to 45,000 years ago is we did have a significant creative explosion. It was about 45,000 years ago that human beings, the first evidence that we had ritualistic behavior. So where we would, like the light in our brain switched on and we became aware of these other dimensions of reality, you could say. It's the first time that we developed sophisticated arts, when we first developed musical instruments, probably dance as well, but you can't preserve that in the fossil record. But I think that something important happened to us at that time. It's also true that sometime around then, human beings developed a new variation in a gene known as the microcephalin gene, which has to do with brain growth and development. We're pretty confident that this came from an external source. That would be another species, whether Neanderthal or Denisovan. Denisovan. And we haven't found those genes in those species. So the question is, where did this allele in this gene come from? And I mean, I realize, look, it's a controversial thing to say, but we somehow got it, and geneticists believe we got it from an external source. So where the heck did it come from? And if it came at around the time of our creative explosion, well, you'd have to wonder, were we manipulated in that, were we tweaked? I do think, like, if you go through the long history of our sightings of other craft and beings and so forth, you could make a very good case that we were the subject to a low-level monitoring process for most of our history, not high level. Honestly, what could a medieval village do with an alien sighting? What could aliens want to do with medieval Europe? I mean, they're just going to take over the unheated castles and live in them. It's like, I can't really see that as an attractive option. But I do think we're moving into the fourth stage of humanity, and that is why they're here in large numbers. And what's the fourth stage? If you look at the long history of our species, we've been around for hundreds of thousands of years as Homo sapiens. We know this now. And before that, for a couple of million years as the genus Homo. With bodies like these, maybe the heads were a little different, but that was us. And for most of that time, human beings lived as hunters and gatherers. Men would get big sharp sticks with points on them, and they'd take down big animals. And men and women would gather food and care for the young and learn to make fire. And like all of that was what we did. We lived completely in nature. And then around 10,000 years or so, or roughly, we began to figure out how to domesticate animals and plants. That's the agricultural revolution. That gives us cities. That gives us writing. That gives us metallurgy, copper and bronze. And that gives us the wheel and all the things that give us civilization, from ancient Egypt to the Italian Renaissance. It's what I would call stage 2 of human civilization. Lots of variations within it, but it's a very fundamentally consistent form of social organization. And then a couple of hundred years, we get into stage 3, which is science and industry. And that's remaking the world again, and also remaking our mind. With the development of science, we develop a new way of understanding reality itself. And that gives us big congested cities. And that gives us, well, the world that we have created. I mean, we think just 200-300 years of this, it's the snap of a finger in the terms of our long history. And we have just completely remade everything. We wake up every day. We think all of this is normal. This is not normal. This is just a brand new invention. and we're changing ourselves faster and faster. And now I believe we're moving into stage 4, and that's, let's call it the transhumanist stage. We can call it a couple of things. It's definitely a transformation of the human species, but it's much more than that. It's 5G 24/7 surveillance. It's like it's complete control, digital control of the human race from centralized structures. So total surveillance, intensive propaganda, and I would go so far as to say mind control over the human population. And essentially the creation of a kind of global police state, I think, is becoming undeniable. And so what will all that do? Well, it's creating a new form of human. And it requires changes not just economically and politically, but really culturally and ideologically and psychologically. And I think we are creating a new human being. I don't know. I don't think I support it. So I liken it to turning humanity into one big anthill. And I'm, I'll be ready to check out of this mortal coil when it really consolidates in a couple of decades. Yeah. And, but I mean, for people who have to live through this, it's going to be completely a fundamental transformation. And then, add in strong generative artificial intelligence, add in complete mastery of the human genome to custom create variations of the human species. That's an obvious one. And cybernetic enhancements. So like, the little Neuralink in your brain that Elon Musk wants to put in, and all of these things are going to be creating a kind of hive mind. I think that's what we're moving toward. And so the reason I think this is important from an UFO point of view is we're in a sense, you could argue that we're turning ourselves into the very aliens that we've been observing all this time. Like we're turning every person who's talked about the Greys, for example, talks about like an apparent hive mind that they have. They're telepathic. They know each other's thoughts. And we're very rapidly in this space of one generation, couple of generations, we're moving ourselves into that direction without a doubt.
Yeah. Do you think that we're going to split off? I mean, at least, for a few decades anyway, those who want to merge with AI and Neuralink and those who you want to hold on to our basic humanity. Do you see that happening? And do you think we have ETs that maybe are, battling for stopping us from going too far, and those who want us to stay, the way we are? I mean, what do you think's going on?
Mm-hmm. Yes to all of that, but the question, so people watching this now would be like, well, that's BS. If this happens, I'm not going to sign on. Yeah. And I'm like, well, good luck, but you're going to be locked out digitally probably of the entire future world and of exchanges and buying things. And very likely it's going to be very difficult for people to opt out of that. Gotta think. And plus the propaganda is going to be to make it happy, make it fun, make it sexy, make it oh, you want to do this. See how easy and convenient it is. We always think of the best case scenario for the use of these technologies. Not many people ask, what's the worst case scenario? Because that's also got to be on the table. So I think there will be people who resist it, but you got a whole new generation now. They're being raised in essentially totalitarian schools. There's no privacy. There's kids having, I think there's probably kids out there today who probably haven't had, 10 hours of their life of totally unsupervised free time away from parents or authorities. They're just not used to having freedom. And so they're growing up without it. They're growing up with TikTok and just locked into that whole thing. So I think we're making them so that they're not educatable, not teachable. They will be entrainable though. So, I mean, by the time my generation's gone, I don't know. I think there may be lots of signing on to this program. But in terms of agendas behind the scenes, yeah, I have a couple of colleagues and friends that I talk about this a lot with, and we wonder. So, is there an ET faction that wants this transformation? I suspect the answer is absolutely yes, they do. Are there ET factions that don't want this? Well, I have not seen any evidence for it. I haven't. When you have everyone saying, "Well, they're here to help us to ascend to the next density and level," I don't hear anyone talking about this, stopping us from moving toward a global police state. I haven't heard a peep about that. So I don't know. But if you were an alien group watching humanity, and this is why I think they're here in large numbers now, you would see the human species now with the keys to the kingdom, like the fire of Prometheus, which is science. So we've discovered science, and we're going to become, clearly we're leaping over ourselves, on this path. It's like an exponential technological path. So they would be quite aware that we're about to leap into their world. And so they would want to know, all right, are these people going to be a problem to us? They're kind of aggressive.
Yeah.
They're kind of assertive. Do we want to manage that? They're developing nuclear weapons and beyond, and they're going to develop artificial intelligence. And are they going to be a hassle? So I don't know. If I were one of them, I might think long and hard about infiltrating the society and managing it. Like I don't want to say, oh, this is an invasion of the body snatchers. But look, if you're here to defend the human species, this would be one thing you'd want to look into. I can't see that you wouldn't at least consider it. I don't know. I have a friend who's absolutely convinced this is the case, and I'm like, well, could be. I don't know, but I would think that I think that there are multiple groups looking at us. I don't think that they're all evil. I don't think that they're all out to get us, but some might be.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they?
So, and just talking about kids, you're so right. Like the technology is nothing for kids now to do everything as their avatar and all of that. It's really moving into a weird space there. Talking about the hive mind. Well, first of all, side note, yeah, they are, they're monitoring. We don't know how many. We don't know how many different kinds or what their agendas are, or if they all kind of take turns coming in and out, and maybe they don't all agree on what to do with us. But you did kind of mention, are we potentially turning into them? Let's just take the Greys, for example, that kind of hive mind. We had Michael Masters on a few weeks ago. I'm sure you know him. And I'm just wondering what you think of that whole idea that they could be us from the future coming back, for a million reasons that we could spend an hour just talking about that. But where are you on that theory?
Yeah, I used to completely dismiss all the time travel theories out of hand. I was like, come on, give me a break. It just was, seemed like a bridge too far for me for a long time. I still don't think that I subscribe to it because I don't have a way of understanding how it really can work. Like time travel going back to affect the past doesn't make sense to me for a lot of reasons. Like if they're coming back in time, then they're coming back from a different timeline, a different dimension of some sort, a different reality. Because if it's our timeline, like what is every moment in time, you could say would be defined by the positioning of every single atom and bit of reality in relation to each other. Like everything's in motion. And the Earth is turning, the moon's going around the Earth, we're going around the center of the galaxy. And so to go back in time, in a sense, would mean that you'd have to rewind the entire universe to that point. And I don't see how that is possible. So I don't really know how to credit time travel theories. I will say, when you look at the gray aliens, they are essentially a human body plan that is artificially... the Greys clearly have to be artificially created. There's no possible way that they are natural organisms. Think about a gray female birthing a baby gray with the skull size what they have. Like it's not possible. Like, it literally would not be possible. Like if you look at human evolution, this is a genuine issue that happened with the genus Homo. That's us. When we started to be upright walkers, when we developed the hole at the bottom of our skull, the foramen magnum, it caused problems with childbirthing because it changed the shape of the pelvis, and the female pelvis had to adapt to this new system to allow for a big skull to come out. It's like, so it's mechanics. Like I just can't imagine that a gray alien, if there's a female, if they have male and female, which I'm not sure they all do. Maybe the taller ones seem to have a gender. A lot of people will detect a male or female gender to the tall ones, not the short ones. So I think they're artificially created. And you can do that with an artificial womb, by the way. We're even talking about these now in our society. So an artificial womb so that a female would not have to nurture it or birth it. You could create a head. You could genetically modify it to have a bigger brain as you want. And I think their body plan is human enough. If you look at the Ray Fowler's work on the Betty Andreasson case, there's reason to think that they're taking hybrid modifications of gray aliens and humans and modifying those to create a version of gray alien. So I don't know about the time travel theory. I think like there's a human aspect to these grays, but my best theory at the moment is that they are taken from our own DNA and mixed with DNA that's not from us.
Okay.
But I mean, look, what do I know? I don't know how to argue the time travel thing. It's, I don't know. It's a little bit beyond my level.
Well, it's just different. It's not beyond. It's just different. It actually resonates with me so much, but we could have a whole other talk about that. Katie and I have actually talked a little bit about how the whole time travel thing could work. But yeah, I just wanted your take on it. And that's important for us on this show, is to get many different takes on what
it could be true in some way. I mean, our minds are really great, but we've got our limits. You know, many of us have pets. I have a nice little cat, and she's a lovely little thing. But there's things that she doesn't know in this world, and there's things that she'll never know. And I think, well, gee, Richard, you think you're so smart. So your cat's here, you're here. What's up here? There's a lot of concepts that a human being is just never going to be able to understand.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and based on your comments, I mean, I'm just thinking that you do believe that there's a hybridization program with ETs and humans going on, possibly, you know, with the Greys and maybe other races of ET beings. Mm-hmm. Do you believe they're walking among us, or are these hybrid children being off-world? Are they going to their planets?
I think some walk among us.
Oh, interesting.
And when you talk with researchers of abduction, whether it's from one end of the extreme like David Jacobs or another end like Barbara Lamb,
mm-hmm.
I know David and Barbara very well and respect them both. They both talk about hybrids, okay. and everyone in between talks about hybrids. Now, there's a difference. So the way that David has talked about it is the hybrids are created, and then as his research or his abductees are indicating, they're basically raised on the ships and then introduced, and they don't know how to deal with people. They're almost sociopathic in their inability to deal with people other than by controlling them mentally. When you talk about other forms of hybrids, and Barbara's got a lot of these and others, they're born into human families and they discover at some point in their life that they're hybrids. And like neither theory is bulletproof in any way. Like, I mean, it's easy to criticize both of them, but these are two different theories of what hybrids are. So, in the latter theory, they're born into human families with the mission. Many of them will say that to help humanity move to the next stage of its consciousness or its being. A lot of them will feel this way. Mm-hmm. So. But then, you know, I'll just tell you, I mean, I've repeated some of these stories a number of times, but I have been told some very highly credible stories by folks about totally human-looking beings who they've encountered who are intensely telepathic, who don't seem like they come from around here, and very mysterious. One of the people who told me this was a retired Air Force colonel with a PhD. He and his wife told me a story about an encounter that they had with a friend of theirs, of this blonde couple, like supermodel male-female couple, that absolutely got into the head of this colonel. And they talked about it at great length. It's a fascinating story. And a similar story I've repeated many times of a woman. She came to me with her husband. This is 12 years ago. She said, when I was in church in 1965 as a teenage girl, I was with my mother in Western Pennsylvania, where everyone knew everyone, especially in church. She said, this blonde couple, male, female, absolutely supermodel gorgeous, she said, sat in front of me, and I could hear them in my mind until they shut it down. And then when the service ended, she followed them out of the church. Her mother had no idea. Her mother's like, get back here, young lady. And she just goes after them, working through the crowd. She followed them toward a wooded area. They go into the woods. They're going into the woods. They're not going into a parking lot after church. And at the clearing of the woods was a guy who she described as looking like Lurch from the Addams Family TV show, which scared her, and she didn't go any further. Oh, very bizarre story, but she heard them in her mind, she said to me. Oh, and she's like, what the hell is that? I don't know. Yeah. So it's fascinating. There's many of them. I've got a lot of those stories.
Katie, you were telling me about somebody.
I was just telling Katie this morning. And I don't have his permission to tell this story, so I'm going to be really vague, but I dated someone in high school who was just a beautiful but very unusual person. And yeah, without his permission, I don't even really want to describe him, but I'm going to say this. I have always felt that he had this very from out of this world kind of quality. He's the only person I've had telepathy with. It happened twice. The most unimportant information came through. One time we were at a party, he was across the room, and I heard him say, "I'm ready to go now." And then I watched him, he was in my left ear, just like he was talking to me. I watched him slowly walk across the room, and sure enough, he stands to my left and says, "I'm ready to go now." Wow. And I was just like, what? I'm getting the chills talking about it. And around the same period of time, it happened again. Again, nothing important. But it was like our minds just connected. And he's just to this day one of the most unusually gifted people and very unusual personality. So I'm really starting to come around to this idea that they are walking among us. I'm going to have to call and be like, "I was talking about you today. I'm pretty sure you're an alien." But talk about this whole hybrid thing, these ones that look so human. There's a story in your book about Herb Shermer. Am I saying that right? There was an account of seeing someone's pupils go lizard-like. And
the Shermer case is a pretty well-known one in UFO studies, and he was a police officer in the late 1960s, I think 1967. And yes, he did describe having an alien being encounter with a very human-looking entity, not quite human, but yes, that's right. He described the vertical slits in the eyes.
So I'm wondering, because I had a friend come to me recently and say, "Look, I've never told anybody this, but I've been around very normal looking humans. It's happened to me twice. And all of a sudden their pupils, while I'm talking to them, go into a slit and then go back to normal." Is it possible that these hybrids just have no idea that they're different? They truly are here to have a human experience, and they're not even aware that this is happening to them, that their pupils can change.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I mean, I wonder. I've heard people tell me similar kinds of stories, and sometimes I hear them and I think, well, I don't really know if I believe you, or I don't. Not that I think you're lying, but I don't know how accurate your perception is. Like, I mean, I just have that reaction a lot of times, but I don't dismiss them all. I would not think to do that. Because there was a lot of them. There's many of these claims that actually are out there. I think there's more than people realize.
Yeah.
So I think that there's a very major undiscussed infrastructure that is in our world of these other beings. Yeah, I believe that. I can't say I can prove it, but I think that that's the most probably the case.
Yeah. I always say Elon Musk,
I mean, think of Bezos, Zuckerberg,
oh yeah.
Think of it this way: if the UFO phenomenon is real, it is real.
Yeah.
The UFO phenomenon is real. It's massive, and so it represents a huge portion of reality that we have not confronted in our world. Like, kids don't get taught this in school. People don't get taught this in the universities. When you're studying the political history of the United States, no one's talking about the UFO impact, even though it's significant. We know that it is. So there's this massive part of our reality that's just been siphoned out of our public discourse. So we have to ask ourselves, like, in this massive thing, which we call our history, how much of the UFO phenomenon needs to be in there, and how has it affected it? It clearly must represent a large portion of energy, resources, whatever the equivalent of money that's gone into this. There's a very significant infrastructure there. It can't just be like, if the U.S. government were to have disclosure, to say, well, yeah, apparently some of these are alien. That's not the end of the story, because that would mean that there's been a massive interaction. What are they doing? What are their goals? Have they been interacting? Well, there's countless story after story of ET human interaction. Now we need to start looking at that. There's many of them. So there's an enormous part of our history and our current reality that's got to be just upside down. Like we're just not discussing this. I think we're just living in a fairy tale,
Yeah.
enforced fiction.
Yeah. What would you say, for years I was quite the skeptic, and I know there's a lot of skeptics out there that don't believe. They might believe that ET exists out in the universe, but they don't necessarily believe they visited Earth just because of the sheer distance and all that propulsion. And I was one of those people. I mean, just up until maybe a year, 2 years ago, I was like, I don't know if there's anything to this. And even being a MUFON field investigator, 90% of our cases, we know what they are. Yeah, there's those small ones that are unexplained, but none of them really convinced me to like, oh yeah, absolutely. What is your favorite case? Like if you're trying to convince somebody that the ET presence on Earth is real, what case would you talk about?
Well, there's a couple of ways I want to approach what you just said, Katie. So one is the skeptical feeling that it's just impossible for them to get here. Now, you hear this a lot with astronomers. They'll be like, well, you people don't realize how vast the distances are. They are distant. They are vast. I don't have the technology to go to another star. All of that is true. So you can there's lots of reasons to discount the UFO phenomenon because it seems impossible by the reality that we've all come to understand. The problem is, tell that to 10 or 20 or 100 or 1,000 good UFO reports. The reports are still there. They still demand an explanation, and it's up to us to ask honestly, intellectually honestly, to say, well, all right, what could these be? So when I started becoming persuaded by this was when I began, not long after I read Tim Good's book Above Top Secret and dove into the documents that came out of the United States military through Freedom of Information, which, we all know that there are such documents. I still think most people really haven't looked at most of them. But during the 1970s, after Nixon resigned, actually it was one of the last things of Nixon's presidency where they strengthened FOIA. And then under Jimmy Carter, he issued an executive order in 1977 to strengthen freedom of information even more. As a result of that, we actually started getting thousands of pages of UFO-related documents out of military and intelligence agencies. And so there wasn't any one of those documents that was the smoking gun that said, like, boss, we're being invaded by aliens. Like, okay. But there were many that were just one cut below that, that described astonishing Air Force and Navy jet interception attempts of objects that were described as disc-shaped, that moved in ways that were incredible at speeds in multiple thousands of miles per hour, again and again and again, using military instrumentation and sophisticated scientific equipment, going back to the late 40s. So, you read these and you can see, all right, well, the military is taking this seriously, while at the same time they're lying to the public. That was all known. And meanwhile, they're scratching their heads asking, what are these things? Is it the Russians? Well, they looked into that. There's no evidence that the Soviets were behind any of these. And they would ask, is this something that we're making covertly? Well, that program hasn't been found either. There's lots of speculation about, German scientists after World War II. Were they working on flying saucer technology? That's a major area of study. But I would say there is evidence to show that some of the Germans were interested in some unconventional physics. Nick Cook in the book The Hunt for Zero Point kind of gets into some of this. But there's no proof, certainly no proof, and not even a lot of evidence to show that they were building functional flying saucers. A couple of stories that I don't put a lot of credence in. So now you're asking, like, well, who's making these things? And where's the infrastructure for that? We don't have answers. So for me, what persuaded me wasn't one particular case, but it was looking at the FOIA release documents of the late 40s and early 50s. And there was one CIA document of December 1952, which I've always been one of my favorite ones to quote. It's by H. Marshall Chadwell, who is scientific director of intelligence for the CIA in December of 52. This is right before Eisenhower becomes president a month later. And Chadwell's writing to Walter Beadle Smith, who was CIA director at the time. And he says to his boss, at this time, reports indicate that something is going on which must have immediate attention. Sightings of unexplained objects at high altitudes in the vicinity of major U.S. defense installations are of such nature that they are not attributable to natural phenomena or known types of aerial vehicles. It's like, holy smokes, like you're just laying it right out there. This is what was being discussed in the classified world.
Yeah.
So I became convinced that someone had something that wasn't supposed to exist, doing things that were not supposed to be possible. And all of this is being hidden from the public. And skeptics will say, well, it's impossible to hide something like this from the public. I'm like, are you kidding? Like the entire notion of modern national security state governance is based on secrecy.
Right.
And they're great at keeping secrets. They're great at managing the media. People need to understand just how easily media has kind of folded into the national security apparatus over the last human lifetime.
And it's so compartmentalized. I mean, thank goodness for John Greenwald Jr. and everything he does with the Black Vault. And, speaking of documents, FOIA and that, and I'm confused about this because there's two different views on those old MJ-12 documents. Where do you fall on that? Are those real, not real? What?
I believe, this is just belief, that there is or was or is a group that would be like MJ-12 to manage this, that would go beyond even formal White House control. That would be of necessity. I mean, these days, everyone kind of realizes that what the U.S. president is normally is supposed to be selected, not elected. I mean, that's obvious. And the president doesn't determine policy. How can the president do anything like that? They're basically, they're puppets on a string like all the other political leaders. And when they're not, then they have to be run out of town. That's what I would say. But MJ-12, the MJ-12 documents came out initially. They were leaked. First of all, you've got the Linda Moulton Howe, Richard Doty situation from April 1983, where Doty brings her into Albuquerque at Kirtland, and he's showing her documents that she's not allowed to take with her that talked about crash retrievals, and not just Roswell, but the Aztec crash, I believe, was discussed in that one. That was interesting. Mm-hmm. And then a year and a half later, the documents are mailed to Bill Moore's associate, Jamie Chandray, both of whom had intelligence community connections, Chandray and Moore. So they get negatives and undeveloped photographic negatives in the mail. They are developed, and those are the first time we see of the MJ-12 documents. Now, at that time in the early 80s, you had a situation where documents were being pulled out of the government through Freedom of Information. They were causing a bit of a ruckus at this time. Like, it's easy to forget this. The first FOIA documents were published in a book called Clear Intent around 1984. And there was some newspaper coverage of the FOIA documents, not a lot, but some. And so if you're a secret keeper concerned about managing the UFO secret, you might be thinking these released documents are a problem. And then at the same time, we're getting the first indications of crash retrievals of UFOs. Not just Stanton Friedman, he was in the game doing this, but also Leonard Stringfield, even more important, was getting a lot of information on crash retrievals. So these were the two prongs of a threat, you could say, against the old secrecy. And so what better way to throw cold water on this than to release tampered documents that look like they're from the government, that deal with crash retrievals, that one could then prove and say, aha, those are fake.
Fake, yeah.
Like, that's a great way to we talk a lot about vaccine these days, but a vaccine is basically giving you a dead version of a virus. At least that's how it used to be. And so your body would be immune to it. And that's really what the MJ-12 documents could be seen as, a way to immunize the public. So that the next crash retrieval story that comes out, people would say, oh, yeah, more fake documents. And a good way to throw discord into the community. So that's a theory. But having said all of that, I do believe that those documents were not just manufactured totally out of thin air. I personally believe that they were pulling from something that was real. And, I just mentioned the late Stan Friedman. He did a fairly deep dive into those MJ-12 documents. And the fact is, this is an uncomfortable fact that debunkers don't like to hear, but there is a lot of very interesting connections, true connections between those documents and things that we know to be true, including the dating of the document and much more. I don't want to get into the weeds on it, but there are reasons to think, aha. And then when you look at the 12 names of the MJ12 members, they actually all made a lot of sense for various reasons, including Donald Menzel, who was one of them. He was the big astronomer or skeptic. People were like, Menzel's name, why the hell would he be on there? Well, it turns out, and Stan found this, in fact, in the archives, Menzel had a long-standing connection with the NSA. No one knew. He was the world's leading skeptic of UFOs for decades. He was also a world-class cryptologist. His wife did not even know that he worked within the highest circles of the National Security Agency. And some people try to pass that off and say, well, no big deal. I don't know. I think it's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
So there's things about the MJ12 documents that I think a mistake that we make when we run into what we conceive as or think of as disinformation, we say, oh, well, it's all BS, throw it all out. But I don't think that's what disinformation is. Like disinfo has to have truth in it or you'd never believe it.
Right.
It would not be credible.
It's true.
Okay, well, so kind of along this line of thought, just in terms of truth, wondering how you feel about where we are in terms of disclosure. I feel like as ufologists, we can almost split our history into pre-2017 and post-2017.
I agree.
But, the average person's just like, okay, cool. Yeah. All right. Our government knows about UFOs. I mean, it's barely made a ripple, but for us, it's huge. It's a massive change. I'm just wondering if you feel like we are getting somewhere or we're still just like, oh my God, we still have
we have a long way to go. We have a long way to go. We're taking the tiniest of baby steps. Prior to 2017, it's true, like the public conversation on UFOs was essentially at zero. We were having no public conversation about UFOs. So with the creation of what was then TTSA, Tom DeLonge, Chris Mellon, Lou Elizondo, Hal Puthoff, Sammy Van, the rest. I mean, so we initiated public conversation that clearly was very designed for mainstream media consumption. And this is what frustrated a lot of UFO researchers, and I mean, the fact that the New York Times covered this in 2 articles, not one, but 2 articles in December of 2017, shocked all of us, shocked me. Mm-hmm. The New York Times is the American version of Pravda, from the old Soviet days. I mean, it is the official establishment mouthpiece, always has been, and it's more so now than ever. So for the New York Times to cover UFOs in a sympathetic way, which is a complete 180 from where it had been for decades and decades and decades, yes, it's worth asking, what is that all about? Is this a psyop? Many people were asking this. I asked it. Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I know Leslie Kean and Ralph Blumenthal. I've talked with Leslie particularly about this article. And my feeling is this was their genuine attempt to get legitimate UFO information out there within very tight constraints of the New York Times. Mm-hmm. And the reason the New York Times covered this at all, I think the only reason, is that TTSA had held a press conference a couple of months earlier, and this information was going to come out. There was no way to stop it at that point. Mm-hmm. And so I think the New York Times was persuaded, by Leslie and Ralph to get ahead of this, and I think the upper leadership probably plugged in with the national security apparatus, said, all right, well, we'll put our own spin on it. And they did. They put a lot of skeptical information in there. Guarantee you, Leslie and Ralph did not want that in there. But the larger point is, where are we? We're at a point now where we're able to say, well, there's something out there. We don't know what it is. That's essentially where we're at. There's not even an official disclosure that these are definitively alien. This is still a huge argument. Mm-hmm. Are they Chinese drones? Are they Russian drones? We're still hearing all of this. In fact, there are analysts who argue this very explicitly. I don't agree with them. I don't think that's the case. And especially it's not the case when you look at the long history of military encounters with UFOs, not just in this century, but in the 20th century. You're going to tell me that the Russians had drones that could move in multiple thousands of miles per hour or shut down nuclear missiles in the 1960s and tamper with them throughout the decades? No, I don't believe it. Not at all. So here's the problem with the UFO phenomenon. We're in a culture now where you're not supposed to believe in conspiracy theories at all. I mean, go to DHS just published a memo a week ago, essentially, seemingly criminalizing conspiracy theories. It certainly seems that way to me. And this is just the longest step in a series of many steps that they've been taking. Conspiracy theories you're not supposed to believe in them, and we all know this now. Well, the UFO cover-up is the granddaddy of all conspiracy theories. What is bigger than that? So it's a hard thing for me to imagine the United States government saying, don't believe in conspiracy theories, well, except the UFO one. That's true, but don't believe in any of the others. Like, it's not a really good place to be. So this narrative has to be completely managed, and we are obviously moving in a world which is a globalist, top-down directed revolution. It's an international revolution. We've never seen this before. Yeah. We're living in it now. If you want to know what a seizure of state and a cultural revolution and a 21st century revolution looks like, well, look around you. We're living in it. And so in this environment, narrative control is clearly becoming more and more important than ever before. So I think what we're looking at is an era where certain elements of the UFO subject will be safe to discuss, but the cover-up aspect, crash retrieval aspect, the deep, lifetime worth of lies aspect, that's the red line. And I just don't see that being an easy one to cross.
Yeah, I get that. So I want to ask this, though, as kind of a follow-up. I just think we were talking earlier about Google Earth and with the access people have now just with their cell phone and the kinds of things they can film and instantly, blast out, on the internet. I mean, they can't control everybody. And I feel like disclosure in a way is really going to just come from the people. There's just going to be so much out there. People are going to start having their own experiences. And I mean, they can't stop everybody from talking about what they're seeing. Maybe it's going to get to the point where we just don't even care what our government has to say about this whole topic because so many people are having their own experiences, Yeah.
Well, this is a real issue. It's like, well, Google, of course, is every bit as in bed with the national security apparatus as any legacy media. Google arguably was created by CIA money and organization in the 1990s and has always been really in service of what we can call the deep state. I don't think there's any argument against that. If one looks into the history of Google. So Google, and they obviously have dishonest algorithms. YouTube itself, which is part of Google, has the most dishonest algorithms out there. That's why everything's in favor of corporate media. When you go search for UFOs, you get CNN and Fox and NBC and ABC. Like, good grief! Like, private independent voices are absent for a reason. So Google is fundamentally dishonest. But and Google Earth, by the way, we also know will certainly protect classified parts of the world. There's a book called Blank Spots on the Map by a man named Trevor Paglen, where he talks about all the areas of our world that are blank spots on the map. So I think Google Earth participates in that. But your larger point, Katie, is that will the people without, independently, will we be able to figure things out on our own? Well, I think, yes, there's a certain percentage of the population that does figure this out on its own. And the real question that we're going to see is in the coming decade, amidst all of the other crazy things that are going to be happening, we're looking at economic dislocation. We're looking at, that's going to be a big one, and political, there's going to be a lot of other strife happening. So the question is, will the UFO reality within all of the insanity that's going on around us, will we be able to create enough of an independent platform of our own to actually challenge the official narrative that will be imposed, undoubtedly imposed from centralized authorities? Yeah, and it's big tech plus big finance plus the intelligence communities plus everyone working with them. So it's going to be tough to fight them.
Right. Speaking of narrative, what do you make of this? I mean, everything's fear, like to be feared. Threat is a threat. Yep. What do you make of that? And how do we battle that? And do you believe that it is a threat?
No, the attempt is being made to break people down psychologically. Mm-hmm. It's that simple. I mean, It's to scare the hell out of people, because when people are afraid, then they do things that they would never otherwise do, and they would hand over rights that they would not otherwise hand over. So I mean, how much more obvious can it be? We've been beaten down with a big stick of fear for 2 years now. And you'll notice, like, it goes up and down and up and down and up and down. Like, there's got to be really good Pavlovian training going on there. So, like, people become afraid, then they become a little less afraid, but they're still in this heightened stage. Then it goes up again, and then it comes down just a little bit, and then it goes up even a little bit higher. So, no, I think this is explicit manipulation, is my own position on it.
And do you believe that there's going to be like a false flag alien invasion? I've heard people talk about that, and I'm like, oh no.
I'm a believer in false flags. I don't know about the alien invasion false flag. I'm not a believer in that yet. Okay. But I will say that, so I think that there's going to be a couple of false flags this year. I just think so. But I think that an alien-based false flag, no, like when TTSA was active and doing their thing, there were a couple of highly prominent UFO folks who said that this is a false flag, or there's going to be a false flag. Basically something to make you be afraid of an alien invasion and run to the arms of the military for protection. That's the general scenario of a false flag. I don't think that that's the case. I think, in fact, if there's any message that we're getting in the media, it's don't be afraid of aliens. I'm not hearing who's talking about a fear-based message of ET. I mean, occasionally Elizondo will say, well, this is a national security threat. Well, it is actually. I mean, I wrote 2 big fat books on military airspace violations by unknown objects. Well, yeah, if you're a military person, you're going to take this seriously. Otherwise, you're not doing your job. Right. Like, that doesn't mean you should be terrified. But I think with Elizondo and Mellon, when they're saying it, I think they're just trying to grab the media by the shoulders and say, wake up, please. Like, will you just look at this phenomenon for a split second and recognize that this actually could be serious? I think they're just trying to get attention. Right.
Because they won't look at it unless it's a threat. I mean, they're shutting down our nukes and everything. So that
makes no one in CNN, no one in Fox, like no one anywhere is pounding this threat narrative. Like, where the hell is it coming from? It's not coming from any official source. Yeah. So I don't think that they're lining up for an alien invasion false flag. But I think, no, we're in an era of false flags for sure.
Yeah, we do hear that word threat quite a bit. But I mean, again, like you said, Katie, it seems like, if anything, they're trying to save us from ourselves. But I kind of shy away from anybody who says, no, I know 100% they're not a threat, or yes, this is definitely a threat. I just prefer people to be like, you know what, we're still just gathering evidence. We just simply don't know. But what do you make of the Navy being more forthcoming?
Yeah, it's interesting.
Than the Air Force. It's like,
and then the Air Force. Well, you know, Chris Mellon just wrote I thought a very fine article a couple of weeks ago on why is the Air Force totally silent on the UAP matter. And he was exactly on point for calling them out. I mean, he really called them out. In fact, he talked about how the Air Force has a whole array of sensory platforms where they obviously can detect UFOs, and yet it appears to him that they did not contribute a single sighting to the Navy task force from last year, which had 144 cases. So, yeah, why is the Navy doing this? Well, what we can say, historically, is that the U.S. Navy has always had a strong level of independence from the Air Force and the other military services on UFOs, going back to the 40s and 50s, way back. The Navy is a proud service. You know, they have the longest history, and they have a history of powerful intelligence operations. U.S. Naval Intelligence is a long and very dignified and excellent history. So they've always seen themselves as independent of the Air Force, and also looked at the Air Force back in the 40s as this upstart organization. Who the hell is the Air Force? We're the Navy, damn it. And they, in many ways, in fact, there was a Navy revolt in the late 40s called the Revolt of the Admirals, where the Navy wanted their own nukes on their own carriers, and they got it. They succeeded. And they were independent with UFOs as well in a lot of ways. So in a sense, you could say the Navy's attitude continues that long history of independence on UFOs. But the real question is, why are they, is a faction within the Navy seemingly pushing openness on UFOs. I don't have a full answer on this. I don't know. I will say in my own history of talking with Navy and Air Force folks on UFOs, the most interesting UFO stories I've gotten are all from Navy people. They encounter this a lot out at sea. They've lots of encounters, is what I certainly gather from them. So it's important to the Navy. Is there an ulterior motive? Undoubtedly, there's an ulterior motive. And there's, is there a power struggle at some level between them and the Air Force? Yes, probably. I don't have a full answer, but it's very obvious that the Navy is pushing this much more than the Air Force.
Do you think the Air Force could possibly have been privy, back in the late 40s, even to, 47, that's when Army kind of switched over and Air Force came into being, right? Not too far after Roswell. Were they privy to some, metamaterial, back engineered? And that's why Air Force is remaining quiet. Out in Elbert County and some of the research I've done, it seems like the Air Force has basically more to lose or more to hide. And maybe that's why they're still remaining quiet. Do you think that could be the case?
Well, in terms of, certainly in terms of UFO encounters, we know that Air Force pilots have had countless, many encounters. So they have a lot of knowledge. Gun camera footage, we can assume, is massive, and we've never seen any of that. They have a lot of data on this, obviously, and they don't want to give it up. That's obvious. And they would be implicated in longstanding lies and secrecy, so that's embarrassing for them. But so would the Navy, you would think. The Navy also has a lot. In terms of metamaterials, so if you look at the Roswell crash, that was recovered by the Army Air Force when Roswell was still under formal U.S. Army command. So it'd be a good question to ask, who would have the Roswell material? Would it be the Army or then the Air Force?
Right.
Or is it, as many people think now, in the hands of private contractors that are beyond freedom of information requests? I don't know. The Air Force definitely has a longstanding institutional obstinance on UFOs. They always have. They've never been anything other than stonewalling.
And a lot of these, black access projects, DARPA and that, do they run more through the Air Force, more so than the Navy? Because that would be liability, on that end. I often thought about if they were out there up to doing nefarious things out there, because where this ranch property when I was a young girl was not too far from the Air Force Academy and NORAD and all that. So, we have evidence that, Fort Carson and Air Force and NORAD they were well aware of what was happening out there, this high strangeness ranch. And so they would be liable. They would be culpable for, they've changed my whole life and its trajectory. But who, if they're playing around with who knows what out there, mutilating the cattle, or Linda Moulton Howe got her stout. That there's this whole liability piece, and maybe they'll have to wait another 30 or 40 years when we're all gone, and then it comes out.
That's outstanding, Katie. I think that's a really excellent reasoning. I hadn't really gone down that road, but I think you've got a really good point there. I'd like to follow up on that. It's very interesting.
Well, I've got a question for both of you. All right, if we had to pick one human to represent us, let's just say, all right, we're ready for them to land and we need a human representative, human representative to talk to them. I would go with Dolly Parton.
Oh,
really?
Dolly.
Yes.
I'd go with Joe Rogan.
Really? Okay.
Why not? Rogan's got the best BS detector of any public figure that I know of. You can't lie to that guy.
That's true.
What about you, Katie?
Dolly Parton. I love Dolly Parton. So
because
she's wonderful.
They have to fall in love with us if Dolly,
I think Dolly's fabulous. But I guess I would probably vote for Rogan.
Okay. What about you, Katie G?
Gosh, you put me on the spot here. This has to be a living person, not somebody that's gone. We can't bring back like Leonardo da Vinci or anybody like that.
Wish we could.
Gosh, I don't know.
I'll have to think on it. So I think about it. I've got another question for Richard.
I would pick a child. That's what I would do. Just a child. Innocent.
Let's just switch gears a little bit because we don't have that much time with you left. And I just want to kind of go in a completely different direction and just get your thoughts. Katie and I and Chris as well, we talk a lot about how people don't just typically have a UFO experience. It seems to open up a whole world of paranormal experiences, even if it's just synchronicity and, ESP, and just your thoughts on that.
It's true. And it goes both ways. Like, you've talked to lots of folks who will say something like the following: I started meditating, and 6 months later, I had this really weird experience. Like, it's like something opened up with them to have this experience. Or conversely, someone will have a close encounter and will be transformed in a variety of ways. The guys who were part of the Allagash abduction many, many years ago in the 70s, Jim and Jack Weiner, who are brothers, I remember talking with them, and they were both convinced that in the aftermath of that experience, Jim's artistic ability, he said, it went way, way up. He said, before that, I was just a regular mediocre potter. And after that, he said, I started creating like these really amazing things. And Jack as well, I can't remember. I think he got into mathematics at a very like high level after all of this. And, but then you have, there's a lot of that type of connection, like something arguably opens up. I think that these beings, like they're interested in more than just our reproduction. Like, they're interested in our mind. They're definitely interested in our mind. Like, think of it this way. Like, if you're a super telepathic, intelligent alien and you're looking at humanity, most of which is probably not going to be that interesting to you. Let's just get real about it. But there'll be some people who might be very interesting to you. And it would be those people who, especially if you're very telepathic, those people who may have those abilities a little bit higher than the average might be those that are interested in you. And maybe something switches on after encountering. I mean, anecdotally, you hear it so frequently. I don't think it can be dismissed. So there is a connection. And then you've got people wondering about the connection between UFOs and other paranormal things, like I think you were kind of hinting at here. Mm-hmm. Yeah, look, anyone who's been in this long enough wonders about this type of connection. And I don't have all the answers on this either. I can't pretend that I've got this one buttoned down. I think that there is a connection in various ways. I got to say yes.
Well, some people just say, once you've had a paranormal experience of any kind, you're looking at the world in a different way. So maybe you're just literally going to see things that other people may just be too closed off from.
Yeah. I think that's definitely got to factor into it. Yeah. Without a doubt.
I think humans are really entertaining. They got bowls of popcorn. They're like, oh my gosh. And I mean, if they are really AI too, and they're very robotic in that, I think they would look upon humanity as being very creative. I mean, you said it earlier, we're creating music and dance and art, and we can love 1 minute and hate the next. And I think just our bipolarness of being human has to be entertaining for these people. And they're like, what the heck? I mean, I think,
think of it this way.
How's this going to end? Because we're all wondering too.
we're so in the habit in our culture of like hating on ourselves.
Yeah.
All the time. It's like, we suck. We're so violent. We're so tribal. Stan Friedman always talked about our tribal nature. And it's like, okay, yeah, fine. But we're pretty interesting. Like,
great.
You mentioned Leonardo. We have Leonardo. We've got amazing art. We have Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Come on, man. As Joe Biden would say. Come on, man. We got some good stuff going on here. And we are fascinating. And we've figured out how to make some very powerful weapons, which are scary. But even those are impressive. We're on the cusp of very powerful artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And so any species that's able to look at us has got to be thinking, whoa, okay. And they are creative and they've got a sense of humor. We don't think they're funny, but at least they think they're funny. They'll be looking at all of the things that we do as yes, I think we're a very vibrant culture.
What if they're trying to create the perfect being, a little bit reptilian, a little bit human, the grays? I mean, what if the whole idea, maybe there's many different races involved because they're trying to say what would be the ultimate being. And we would provide something, like you said, just our passion, Katie. I mean, just our fight or flight. I mean, there's certain things built into us that have kept us alive.
The ultimate being would be one that is ultimately adapted for its current environment. That's all that would be. Like the shark is the ultimate being for the ocean.
That's true.
It's been perfectly evolved. It hasn't really needed to change for millions of years, whatever. The only reason that we change at all is because our environment around us changes. And this is why we're changing rapidly now, because we have been changing our own environment. In the last 10,000 years, since we've had settled societies, our brain has shrunk by about 10%. Because we don't need as much brain. Brains are expensive for a body to have. And the equivalent is like if you took an ice cream scoop to an ancient person's brain and took out that much, then you get our brain. Our brains have shrunk. Are we dumber? Well, probably in some ways we are, yes. Like we wouldn't be able to survive as hunters and gatherers the way they could because they needed more brain capacity, and it probably included some psychic capabilities, I would bet. But we adapt to our new environment, and we're adapting even faster now because we're changing our environment even more rapidly. Yeah. So if we are part of some melting pot, if I can use that word, of a new species, it would only be because our qualities would be useful for whatever environment they require.
Right.
So
yeah,
because that's really all that evolution. I'm a definite evolutionary fanboy. Evolution only happens because species have to adapt to this specific eco niche that they're in. And when that niche changes, they either go extinct or they adapt to it.
Right. Unless we are somewhere creating a whole new place for us to go. And they want to make sure they've got the best personality traits, if you will, you know. I mean, who knows? I mean, there's a reason why we're so focused on trying to get off world. I just wonder if our future, it could be 1,000 years from now, but if we don't create a whole new Earth somewhere and everybody gets to,
I think we're going to look at a future by either a strict biological caste system, kind of like what Huxley wrote about 90 years ago with Brave New World. So you'll have different, officially different kinds of human beings. I think that's very likely.
Yeah.
Or
concerned with some of the changes that are going on right now, though. Did you guys, I mean, just yesterday I was watching on the news and some videos that were coming in social media of these weird changes that are happening right now, like today, of these huge flocks of birds just falling, dying, the dolphins that just rushed up like they were in fear trying to get out of the ocean, like running up on shore. Like, what is causing the animals to act that way? And not to get down a conspiracy theory thing, but I worry about like the 5G and what we're doing to, the electromagnetic pulse of the earth and all that good stuff. So maybe we do need to get off world. And I didn't mean to interrupt there, Richard, but I was just like, I'm a little concerned with how we're changing so quickly.
Yeah,
anyway.
well, we're changing so fast. By the way, never be afraid of conspiracy theories. We've been entrained by a media propaganda barrage to think of everything as conspiracy theory, as a big joke. Conspiracies are real, and we shouldn't run away from them. Even Gore Vidal, who's one of my heroes, said, "I'm not a conspiracy theorist." I think he called himself a conspiracy analyst. That was Gore Vidal. Give the man some credit. Right. So, no, there are conspiracies, and they happen all the time. Right. But in terms of, I didn't know about that story you were mentioning, Katie, so that's interesting.
So, Richard, we only have, maybe 9 minutes left or so. What do you got down the pipe? What are you working on now? I wanted to mention, too, your YouTube channel that you have, and that seems pretty active. So tell us what you got going on.
I'm working on 2 books at one time. It's probably not the best idea. So one is my next volume of UFOs in the national security state. And I actually can say that I'm actively working on that. So I've written 2 volumes. I've written a bunch of other books, but I want to get to the 3rd volume. Oh, there's the picture of the first volume right there. There's number 2. That one took 5 years off my life.
Oh, wow.
So I'm working on the 3rd. And the big debate is, am I going to cover the last 30 years of history in volume 3, or am I going to make it 3rd and 4th volume? This is just killing me. But what I'm doing right now is I'm pulling out a tremendous amount of data of 21st century UFO encounters right now.
Oh.
It's blowing my mind. There's just so many incredible ones that no one even knows about. Yeah. So I'm doing all of that. And the other book project, I'm creating a text version of a series of short little lectures I gave 2 years ago. Each was like 15 minutes. They were briefly on YouTube. We had to pull them from YouTube because they've been bought by another company. So anyway, it's a lecture series of UFOs that I'm turning into a book. Hopefully I get that done. But volume 3 of National Security State is my big project. And it's, I have to say, I'm actually quite engaged in it. I'm enjoying it. And I don't want to get too delayed on it.
Yeah. As a researcher, I know you get lost in those things. I mean, it took me 3.5 years to do that Letters of Light and Love for Dr. Leo's. I went to the archives and, 84 boxes of documents. And I find it hard. I don't know if you experience that as well, but you get to writing and then you go down a rabbit hole of a case and you want to research it and go on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The thing is, it's what I tell anyone who wants to write a book, it's like, look, you've got to organize this. You have to take control of the project, which means people laugh at me when they hear me say this too many times, but I'm like, take a piece of paper and a pencil and just write your table of contents on the paper, like 10 chapters. Yeah, that's the structure. And then I say, take each one of those and break that down into as many relevant subsets as you can. This is your game plan. It doesn't mean you won't change it. And then I'm a fanatic about word counts. People laugh about this. Like if you want to write a 300-page book, that's going to be about 100,000 words. Yeah, basically. So if you've got 10 chapters, all right. So look, 10,000 words a chapter, and then break it down into, if you got 5 little subsections, 2,000 words a subsection. And just get in and get out. Otherwise, because at some point in any writing project, I guarantee you, it's like running off into the jungle with a hatchet or a machete. I don't care how much energy you start with. At some point, if you don't have a game plan, you're going to turn around in that jungle and you're going to say, where the hell am I? And that's the moment the book dies. Yeah. That's when the book dies. So you've got to have a plan. And then even under the best plans, it's difficult and it's not fun at times. But you, at the very least, you can say, all right, I have this little section to do, just 2,000 words. I can do it. Right. And then you finish it and go on to the next.
Baby steps, baby steps.
That's how I would say. A painting's never done. It just ends in an interesting place. And the world is changing so much. And it's like, I just feel like when you're writing a book, on the kind of subject you cover, there's always going to be a new story that comes in and something else. And at some point you do just have to pull the trigger, I guess, and say,
when I wrote my first book, I can say probably more than 25-30% of what I wrote ended up on the cutting floor. I just cut out. There's a lot that I wrote. It was painful. I would look over page after page and I would think, do I need this in here? I mean, I spent 3 hours writing those 2 paragraphs. Right. Nope, doesn't belong. Red line through it. I did that a lot. It was painful at first, but after a while I enjoyed it because you have to ask yourself, does this move your thesis to, because every word that goes on a page, it's not free. It costs readers time and energy and money. Mm-hmm. Nothing's free. Like you're asking someone who doesn't know you, they don't really care about you, to say, stop what you're doing and read this. So you've got to make it count. Oh, wow. No wasted words.
I need to remember that. Wow.
Yeah. Don't
look, we're giving our viewers a whole writing education.
I'm taking all this right now. I'm writing my notes because wow. Yeah.
Every word comes at a price. It's not free.
Boy, that's stressful.
Nothing's free.
We've only got like a few minutes left, but James Webb, real quick, can we talk about that? I'm sure you're following that too. I feel like that could really change this whole discussion.
I don't think that I am. So I'm sorry. I'm a little embarrassed. To fill me in and then I'll,
I think we're still waiting for some, more stuff to come in.
We're going to see pictures right soon, right, Katie?
I just feel like the potential for what this can do for this conversation, for, life out there in the universe and exactly how far away and all of that.
I better get up up to speed on that one. And embarrass myself.
Yeah. Oh, no. Well, and I'm, like I said, I'm really not totally following it every minute, but I'm excited by the potential. I feel like we're going to be having a very different conversation even a year from now, just because of James Webb Telescope. Yeah.
To a quote.
Okay. I gotta get on the game here. Wake up, Dolan.
Yeah. So Richard has a website. Go ahead and say the name of your website.
I have 2, but the main one that I'm active with every week is called richarddolanmembers.com. Okay. There it is. Bingo. We've got, there's a lot of free stuff on there, but there is a paywall as well. I create a lot of, original content for folks there in terms of podcasts, audio, and video, of course, and a lot of articles that I write. That's quite active. And Tracy and I we do our off the cuff conversations. We just did one the other day, which is pretty good on abductions and trauma.
Is that on the YouTube channel? Because you run it.
No, that's not on the YouTube channel, but that is my YouTube channel you got right there. So yeah,
Intelligent disclosure.
Official,
it looks
yeah.
like you have a lot of great content on that. So anybody go check that out.
YouTube's a lot of work for me. Honestly, I know it's important. I do it because I realize, okay, I got to get myself out there and get people to know what I'm up to. But oh man, it's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work.
YouTube's a lot of work.
I think we need to make you a T-shirt that says "Evolutionary Fanboy."
Oh, totally true.
I think you need that shirt.
I'm a fanboy of a few things. Yeah, but I am a total evolutionary fanboy. Yeah. 100%.
I think we need to work on that. Every episode, I feel like we come up with like this great quote that needs to be on a T-shirt. Maybe Katie, we need to talk to Chris and see if we can make MUFON What's Up T-shirts with all these fun quotes that we get.
I'm an evolutionary fanboy, but I have I don't mind saying this. I've developed a definite spiritual direction in my life over the last couple of years, and that's important to me as well.
Yeah.
But that doesn't preclude my fascination with evolution. Definitely not.
And I appreciate how much you're a critical thinker. I mean, yeah, you've had your theories. You started out with certain thoughts, but you have grown and changed, and you're always willing to say, you know what, I thought this last year, but now I'm kind of leaning towards this. And the fact that the spiritual element is coming in, I know that's music to our ears. Katie and I, we love all of that. So I just appreciate that you've grown, because a lot of people get dug into their theories and then
they dig in their heels and they don't move. But
they don't. I don't trust that.
My head's in a very different place than it was 10, 20, 30, 40. Like it's never been in the same place.
Yeah.
I think there's a quote by Muhammad Ali, something like, if you think the same thing at age 50 as you did when you were 30. Can't remember exactly what it was, but it's like you haven't really done any work.
Right. You're not.
Something like that. It's like, all right, well done, champ.
Well, thank you, Richard, so much for being here. This has been, this time just flew by as usual. So
you guys are great. I'd like to see you both with Chris DiPerno. I'm sorry he couldn't be here with us, but this was a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, he'll be here next week.
Right. And thank you, Katie, as always. Captivating questions. I hope we see you back next Tuesday and that you all can join us next week. Thank you to Bill Skywatcher, our producer, and as always, Amanda Kieran. Thank you so much. And don't forget our new time. Next week, we have Sev Talk coming on. So catch us next Tuesday night, 8 to 10 Eastern time. And thank you all for being here. You all have a great night.